Right.
You know, Jake Paul's a kid that's out doing his thing. He's trying to make some money, whatever his deal.
Yeah, I'll fight you.
You would fight me?
Why not?
Dana White ruthlessly humiliates Jake and Logan Paul for another desperate attention grab. After scamming fans with a scripted fight against a retired boxer, the brothers weren't satisfied and attempted once again to deceive the boxing audience with another staged spectacle.
I have the opposite perspective. I feel like ruining my little brother's boxing career would be so bad.
Dana White shuts them down with a brutal reality check, proving once and for all that their promotional antics are nothing but a disgrace to the sport of boxing.
He's a young kid out there trying to make some money.
He's just a young kid trying to make some money. But after all this, it's hard to believe this is the same sport that gave us legends like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and Sugar Ray Leonard. Now it's being disgraced by two YouTube clowns who had officially run out of ways to scam. Jake announced on Twitter, "The moment you've waited for, March 27th, stream on Max." The biggest joke since Floyd Mayweather carried Logan for 8 rounds just to secure an easy paycheck. Boxing deserves better than this circus.
Something to do with some sort of episodic thing, right? That was my first thought. This is not a fight. This is some sort of episodic or documentary style.
Now these two brothers, who would sell their own souls for a trending moment, are throwing hands not for legacy or competition, but because they'd exhausted every other ridiculous storyline they could milk. On March 27, 2025, Live on Max will witness two social media grifters slap each other around in a fight with all the authenticity of a WWE backstage segment. This isn't real boxing. It's reality TV disguised as a sport. A scripted drama where two millionaire brothers pretend to hate each other just long enough to convince gullible fans to waste their hard-earned money on yet another sham. The backlash is brutal and deserved. Let's be real. When a true fighter steps into the ring, they're fighting for something bigger than themselves: legacy, honor, greatness. When Jake and Logan Paul do it, they're fighting for clicks, prime sales, and the next sponsorship deal. The truth is, this isn't boxing. Look at real boxing families. The Klitschko brothers, Vladimir and Vitaly, never fought out of respect for the sport. The Spinks brothers, same thing. But the Paul brothers, they'd auction off their own mother if it meant squeezing another dollar out of their fan base. As Chris Mannix pointed out on Twitter, social media ran with this as a fight. Smart marketing by the Pauls, as always. It was never formally announced as one, just another stunt to keep the hype machine rolling. And Dana White, he's having the time of his life tearing them apart. When the biggest promoter in combat sports calls you out for being frauds, you know you've crossed the line from cringe to full-blown embarrassment. He's been exposing them for years, calling them nothing but glorified con artists pretending to be fighters. And now, with this stunt, he's been proven right yet again.
I'm just gonna tell you the truth, it's not. They're not boxing.
Jake Paul has personal issues with Dana White, but let's be real. He walks around acting like some boxing prodigy. Now, let's break down his so-called career. He's 11-1. Sounds impressive, right? Until you realize his opponents include retired MMA fighters with zero boxing experience, social media influencers, and guys old enough to collect retirement checks. And the one time he fought a real boxer, Tommy Fury, he got humbled so badly that he had to go back to making YouTube vlogs just to distract from the loss. Now, instead of facing another real boxer, he's fighting his own brother, desperate to keep the facade alive.
First time I ever met him, I took my son to the first boxing match. I want to say it was Wilder and Fury. And this kid rolls up on me and got like a fucking jacket on with no shirt. And he rolls up to me the first time. I didn't even know who he was. He's being a total fucking wise ass. I'm like, listen, man, I'm fucking trying to get my seat situated here. He's like, okay, you go on and keep being famous or some shit like that. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? My son told me who he was.
Logan Paul has boxed fewer real opponents than he has staged WWE promos. His biggest fights? Getting carried by a 44-year-old Floyd Mayweather, who barely tried, and a so-called match against Dylan Dennis, which was less of a fight and more of a WrestleMania warm-up. At 29 years old, Logan is still riding the wave of pretending to be a boxer while juggling his WWE gimmick. And this latest fight, it's happening just weeks before WrestleMania, where he's already booked to appear. But sure, let's all pretend this is a serious boxing match and not just another promotional circus act designed to shove prime hydration down everyone's throat. And here's the sad part, it's still going to do massive numbers. Why? Because people love a disaster. Jake's so-called fight against Mike Tyson pulled over 60 million views, not because anyone believed it was a real competition, but because everyone wanted to see just how ridiculous it would be. Now, two brothers with zero credibility in the sport are about to turn boxing into a full-blown joke. And yet, people will still tune in just to witness the catastrophe unfold.
Everybody.
Me?
Yeah, I'll fight you.
You would fight me?
Why not? You're tiny.
I'm taller than you.
So you're still tiny. It would suck to be the one that has to deal with, you know, losing, but I wouldn't be the one that would have to deal
I have
with
the opposite perspective. I feel like ruining my little brother's boxing career would...
Dana White has been saying it for years. These guys aren't fighters, they're opportunists. They've turned boxing into their personal ATM, hand-picking opponents and spinning narratives to trick fans into paying for garbage fights. And with this ridiculous matchup, they've once again proven Dana right. This is what happens when YouTubers infiltrate combat sports. They turn it into a complete joke.
Completely different than what him and his brother are doing. You know what I mean? I'm looking for the absolute best in the world. These guys who have trained their whole life, they fight in these smaller shows, and then they make it to the UFC, and we've put the best against the best. It's just not what we do. There's a market for...
Let's not forget one of Dana White's greatest mic drop moments, when he publicly humiliated Jake Paul by offering him a real UFC fight against Amanda Nunes. That was Dana's way of saying, asterisk, if you're really about that fight life, step in the cage against someone who actually knows what they're doing, asterisk. And what did Jake do? Nothing. He never responded, because deep down, he knows the truth. He's not here for real fights. He's here to cherry-pick opponents, control the narrative, and ensure every fight is scripted in his favor. For years, these guys have whined about UFC fighter pay, taking shots at Dana White, claiming MMA fighters only get 20% of total revenue, while NBA players get 45%. Oh, how noble of them, acting like they're champions for the underpaid warriors of combat sports. Meanwhile, they're out here raking in more money than every single UFC fighter combined, not by proving themselves against real competition, but by staging celebrity boxing matches against hand-picked opponents. It's not about the sport, it's about the spectacle, and the sad part, people keep falling for it.
If I wanted to do a UFC fight, is that something you'd entertain?
Who would you want to fight?
Don't know.
You have wrestling and boxing.
I could get it done.
Do you ever do jiu-jitsu?
Of course.
Yeah.
I could get it done, Dana.
I'm not saying no.
Dana, sign me.
I'm not saying no.
Let's cut through the nonsense. Jake and Logan Paul don't care about fighter pay. They care about their own pay. Every time they talk about UFC fighters deserving better contracts, it's not about standing up for anyone. It's about taking cheap shots at Dana White to keep their names in the headlines. The irony? These two are doing exactly what they criticized Dana for. They're not in this for competition or to test themselves against the best. They're here to milk the system, cherry-pick their fights, and cash in on a fan base too blind to see through the scam. Dana White has absolutely torched them for it, and rightly so. Every time Jake complains about fighter pay, Dana just laughs. Why? Because Jake and Logan are walking proof that you don't need to be a real fighter to make millions. You just need to be a shameless, money-hungry showman. These guys have done nothing in combat sports, yet millions still fall for their gimmicks. It's pathetic. They've turned real competition into a joke. And sadly, it's working.
In the NBA, they're guaranteed a certain amount of money.
Yeah,
they still get paid.
Fuck?
In the UFC, they're not. There's no guarantee you have to go in there and fight to get paid.
Oh my god.
And you take all the risk.
It's ruthless, dude. It's ruthless.
Expect the most scripted trash talk you've ever seen. Childhood grudges will be dragged up, personal insults will fly, and they'll sell it so well that even the skeptics will start to believe they really do hate each other. They don't. The second the fight ends, they'll be backstage together, laughing and counting their millions while their fans argue over who really won. Now, let's talk about the fight itself, if you can even call it that. This won't be a real technical boxing match. It'll be a carefully planned, choreographed spectacle meant for entertainment, not competition. These guys aren't stepping into the ring to prove who's the better fighter. They're stepping in to put on a show, sell pay-per-views, and remind the world that first and foremost, they're entertainers, not athletes. And the saddest part, it's working. People will watch, not because they respect Jake and Logan as fighters, but because they can't look away from the disaster. They'll tune in just to see how bad it gets, to see if this fight will be the final nail in boxing's credibility. When it's all over and Jake and Logan are standing there, shaking hands and splitting their 9-figure payday, Dana White will be sitting back, shaking his head, knowing that once again, he was right. The biggest joke in boxing isn't Jake versus Logan Paul. It's the fact that people are still falling for it. If you're tired of these frauds ruining boxing, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment. Let's expose this circus for what it is.